Is 10:30 on October 27th, and we are here for our annual update with the Idaho Department of Lands. So with that, we will turn it over to IDL for their update. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Eric Troquist. I'm the area manager.
I'm sorry, sir. Would you mind using the microphone so that the people online can hear better?
Yep. So my name's Eric Troquist. I'm the area manager here on the Pend Oreille Lake Supervisory Area. There's 10 supervisory areas in the state, so yeah, we're one of those. And just like to do annual update, kind of what do we do, just a refresher on that, and then any updates from the programs. So what you have in front of you is a map that's kind of tough because that's that map's supposed to be like 6 feet long, but the blue stuff on the map is state endowment land that we manage. The big blob on the west, that's Priest Lake. So our supervisory area goes from the Kootenai County line to Canada, and then between the Selkirk Crest and Montana. And then the other pieces of paper are just, I think I've got 3 of like the just program kind of summary. So that's what we'll do, is we'll go through those. But on the very top of that is our mission, the department's mission, to professionally and prudently manage Idaho's endowment assets to maximize long-term financial returns to public schools and other trust beneficiaries, and then also to provide professional assistance to the citizens of Idaho to use, protect, and sustain their natural resources. So I've kind of highlighted them, so like fire is kind of more the second half. Chad will talk about the first part of that mission. We've got 23 permanent staff on the area. There are more permanent department staff, but they're not within my organization. Some folks who maybe their official duty station is Coeur d'Alene or something like the state. There are some people with like a statewide scope that have a desk here in Sandpoint. 24 seasonals. Those are all firefighters. Most of them have been laid off now, but we have some 8-monthers, so that they'll be on through Thanksgiving. Let's see. So yeah, the programs, there's a lot going on over here. Endowments, so Chad Ramsey is the resource supervisor for our endowment program. Fire, of course, my warden, Brian Hicks, and the assistant warden, Brian Evans, both had conflicts today. I do have Liz Bloxam, who's one of our resource foremen. Forest practices and private forestry is Ken Homick on the end. Ken supervises staff in Bonners, Sandpoint, and Coeur d'Alene. Good Neighbor Authority, which you guys are familiar with, Good Neighbor Authority. So Adam Ivy is in charge of that here, so he'll buzz through that stuff. Other programs, navigable waters. In Idaho, Idaho's public trust lands, when it comes to navigable water, are the lands submerged below the ordinary high water mark. And actually on Lake Pend Oreille, we've got an artificial high water mark because of the dam. So encroachments over the public trust land, we administer that program. Let's see, administered for the public benefit. Idaho Department of Lands manages these lands to provide for their commercial, navigational, recreational, and other uses. Part of that management, and the largest part of that here, is administering docks. So anytime a waterfront lot transfers hands, like there's an assignment, the permit gets assigned, or if somebody subdivides a waterfront parcel, wants to put a new dock in, we're part of that. There are 2 resource specialists in Sandpoint that work in that program. So it's Lake Coquilala, Lake Pend Oreille, the Clark Fork, and then, let's see, the Priest River. I'm not sure how far up, I can't remember how far up the Priest River. And then the Pack River, I think to the bridge at Colburn Culver. I think that's where the line stops, where it's navigable. It's a navigable water below. The
deeper water.
Yeah. But yeah, So two folks, there's more than 3,000 active encroachment permits, so those are docks and boat launches and they're like restaurants over the water out in Hope and kind of thing. Mined land reclamation, abandoned mine reclamation, and dredge and placer mining are also things that the Department of Lands has a role in. That program doesn't have, there's not too much business in that. So anytime someone comes in for one of those programs, I'm calling Boise pretty quick because we got a grip on most of the other stuff, but we just don't do a lot in the mining stuff. But the Mine Land Reclamation Act requires reclamation of affected lands to return them to a productive condition. So if you're mining in Idaho, you need a reclamation plan approved by the Department of Lands. Then another part of that is abandoned mine reclamation. So like thousands of mines have been closed in Idaho since gold was discovered in the Boise Basin in 1860s, just drilling holes all over the place. So a lot of that abandonment happened before responsible mine reclamation policies became a norm. So there's a program, it's completely voluntary, but there's funding available to you've probably seen bat cages and stuff to close, or I think they'll do foam, they'll put a foam bomb down there to plug the hole just to make it safe. Another program and they're not here today, is Forest Legacy, which is the conservation easements. Are you guys familiar with those? So it's a Forest Service program. That money comes from I think it's the Land and Water Conservation Fund. So offshore drilling, those leases with the federal government, there's money that goes into a mitigation pot. So some of those funds are used to essentially help private landowners. So private landowner will sell a conservation easement to keep those lands as one piece, forever. So I have an update from the program manager. The International Selkirk Loop project is owned by Stimson Lumber Company, was completed. That encompasses 8,400 acres in Bonner County. The lands are and will remain open to public for free, non-motorized public access. The Spirit of Mount Spokane project is still underway. This is almost 34,000 acres in Idaho, with lands owned by Inland Empire Paper Company. Approximately 2,100 acres in Bonner County. That would be southwest Bonner County, where that's their bulk of their management is, like Spirit Lake. Let's see. Most of that project is actually in Kootenai County. It's moving forward. There's been a few delays due to the federal shutdown. An appraisal was completed in June this year, and they're waiting for the results of that. They're hoping to close that project in early 2026.
Can I ask you how far into that project are they coming into Bonner County in that Spirit Lake region?
I can show you on the map. It would be just this. So on this map, the brown is Inland Empire Paper Company. Mm-hmm. So it would be these, I'm not sure if that section is in, but it would just be this stuff. So all south of 41. And this one, I think they must have acquired that from Mopus or Hancock. This one it was previously industrial timberland too. So I don't know if that one's part of it, but it would be these.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And Jen Barker, the program manager, is going to send a more detailed update to the county. But she heard that we were coming today and just gave me a couple notes. Stimson Timberland Legacy Project with land owned by Stimson Lumber Company was funded. The entirety of that project is almost 85,000 acres, spanning the 6 northern counties. 25,000 acres are in Bonner County. These lands will remain privately owned working forests in perpetuity while providing free, non-motorized public access to the property. Though those projects, those forest legacy projects, all the states are submitting them. Not everyone gets approved. Idaho's been pretty successful in this program.
So what is the purpose of like Stimson doing something like that?
It keeps the land like it's forever forest land, right? We're gonna make
They can't
forests
sell
forever.
it.
They can sell it. It can't be subdivided. So and they're paid, so it gets appraised at the highest and best use. And then the appraiser, and I'll do my best to explain it. So there's like two appraisals. There's one where it's like free, simple, I can do whatever I want with this land. And there's another one where now you have 35,000 acres that cannot be subdivided. So it's the difference of those two appraisals is the value of the easement. I think the program funds, will fund up to 75% of that value. So usually the landowner or like a land trust, these programs all have you usually work with a land trust like Kinnicksu or the Nature Conservancy or something. They have to come up with the other 25%. And sometimes that's just donated by the landowner.
But it's the benefit of the Stimson or inland that if they put their land in this, there's a tax benefit to them.
Taxes
I
or,
think
They're getting
that's
paid
what-
up front.
and you get
I think that's what he's asking is
Yeah.
why do it? And so there's a benefit in terms of, so I know with Inland Paper, they've always kind of had a consistent model of they are not going to sell their land. It's going to maintain kind of that tree farm production. And so the benefit to them in doing this is that there's a financial positive for them to enter into that agreement by, instead of just keeping it as private land, don't access it. There's a trade-off there.
Yeah, right, if Inland Empire Paper, like they grow trees, that's what they want to do, so here you can get paid to do that, Sometimes they'll do it won't be all, for example, one of these was 34,000 acres, the Inland Empire Paper one. It may not be just one block. They might do it like in 3 pieces. So like that, those pieces can be sold individually. A couple years ago, let's see, in 2018, Chad, and then 2020, the Department of Lands, the endowments acquired land from Mulpus, which is another private industrial landowner, and those came with conservation easements. And then when we're reviewing, when I review those things, I'm always looking for the recreation access and some like the road building, there's some rules about that. Or there can be, as we don't want those things to be too restrictive. There's one, we would prefer that they're not too restrictive.
Yeah, if you're going to invest
right?
in it,
But it's
you
the
want
land, like that's
infrastructure
the
access.
Yeah, it's the landowner though at the time that's
Right.
their call.
Yeah, whatever they signed up for.
Yeah, there's one by MacArthur Lake that is, and Chad, you can talk about.
Yeah, my name's Chad Ramsey. I manage the trust lands for the endowments. No, there you go. Thank you. And yeah, like Eric was talking about, one of the acquired parcels from Mulpus that's next to McCormick Meadows. When Mulpus got that conservation easement, there was a term put in there that there's no public access from December through April. And I think what they did that for is because it is wintering ground for ungulates and deer and stuff, and they wanted to protect that. There's other restrictions such as no berry picking, no fires, day use only. So those are kind of restrictive. And again, the endowments hold those conservation easements off the properties that they purchased. So, is that clear enough? Yeah, I'll give it back to Eric.
So there can be or may be some state endowment lands that have more restrictive uses, and it's not necessarily restrictive uses that were put on it by
Exactly.
the state of Idaho.
Yep.
That's the way it was acquired.
Exactly.
'Cause that can,
And we've looked, and these lands, I guess I should have brought a big map, but I'll show them. Let's see, so these are, here's MacArthur Lake right here, about, yep, right here.
Oh, that one. There we
Yep.
go.
The most, we've acquired, on lands that we acquired from Mulpus, there's three conservation easements, three separate easements. There's one here, there was one on the east side, but this is that one by MacArthur Lake that has those terms about access and stuff. And when you're managing, like we manage 107,000 acres or more, 117, 107. It'd be easier to manage if the if we could just apply, one recreation policy. So we did look into what it would take to amend terms of the conservation easement. And it's very, very difficult, very, very, very difficult. And like talking with Stimson, they're like, essentially don't even try. So, yeah, we're working on it. It's a big part of like educating the public. This time of year.
So do you guys have signage for those special conditions of use at the trailhead because of the fact that they're different than what the public usually expects for IDL?
There are signs at the access points, and then online there's a map about recreational access, and that's all designated on there.
Good to know. Thank you.
yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna let someone else yak for a little bit. Let's go to Adam.
Hi, everyone. I'm Adam Ivy. I'm the program specialist with GNA out of the Sandpoint office. It's myself, and I have two resource specialists underneath me. Right now, what we're really working on is getting ready to gear up for the Sandpoint South, which is basically everything east of 95 up to Gold Mountain. That's decision notice should be done this December, so that'll be our next big project. That project's going to be 8,300 acres, essentially. Of that 8,300, 3,500 is going to be looked at for fuels-only treatment, varying from underburn to mechanical. And then 4,800 is going to be looked at for commercial. Within those commercials, we always end up losing up to 1,000 acres of it just for buffers, non-merchantable material that was actually just not ready for it, and things like that. Scattered land is our other big project. We've been working that. That's essentially everything west of 95 and south of the river. That was a 7,000 acre decision notice that came out. Of that, 3,800 was commercial, of that 3,800, we've sold or are selling 2,600 of that, which has produced 30 million board feet. And then we've got 3,129 acres of that was designated as fuels, and so far we've treated 1,327, or we have it under agreement to be treated. Typically, the way we do things, we come through and hit the commercial elements first to generate the funds, to then start doing the fuels treatments behind. That's why our commercial number always ends up being bigger than our fuels number, because our funds we generate, and then we use them for our follow-up projects to road developments, road reconstruct. We've got some culvert replacements going on up in the Hard Rock area right now. So just general projects like that. If you're not familiar with GNA at all, again, I'm a state employee. We work for the Idaho Department of Lands, but we manage the Forest Service lands. And we take on projects for them under their NEPA decisions. We don't always get full decision notices. So like the scattered lands at Sandpoint South are kind of unique to this area. We're actually the only area that's been given full NEPA decisions like that so far. That is a direction we're trying to work statewide. But so we've had a couple of sales out of the Hard Rock area in the past few years within the Bonner County. And then we had a couple of smaller sales, like off of Homestead Road. We had one small sale off of that, but mostly within Bonner County, we've had the scattered lands decision notice, and now moving to the Sandpoint South.
It's just nice to see the progress.
We like it, yeah. Yeah, we're loving it. Yep.
My name's Chad Ramsey. I manage the endowment lands program out of the Sandpoint office. Eric mentioned a few of the stats already, but we manage 120,000 acres from the Kootenai County line to the Canadian border, so across 2 counties. But you'll notice also, like Eric mentioned, the blue lands are represented on the map of all the endowment lands. And so Bonner County covers 2 different administrative areas. The large block to the east of Priest Lake is managed out of the Coolin office. And their program up there looks very similar to ours as far as size. And these lands, primarily, they're managed for returns to the endowments, 95% of those endowments being public schools. On your fact sheet, you'll see there are 8 different endowments that are landowners of these trust lands, and these lands are held in a trust to be managed by the Idaho Department of Lands for those financial returns. And those funds go into a large permanent fund, which is managed by the endowment board investment. And then the interest from those permanent funds are then distributed to those endowments. And as you see, like last year was a record distributions, like public schools, well over $100 million. So, and all through the state, those lands are used to make money through different activities. There's timber management, oil and gas, alternative energies. There's quite a grazing is a popular one down south. But as you probably know, our primary moneymaker in the north is active timber management. And so out of this office, spanning those 120,000 acres, we harvest 35 million a year. And right now, that's about 25 contracts, and it grosses out, money-wise, going to make about 12 million a year out of this office. So like I said, Priest Lake has a very similar program, so you could kind of imagine. And that's myself and 6 other foresters. And how that's structured is we have 4 foresters that focus on unit management, and 2 of those foresters are they work out of this office, but their primary owner or their management areas are in Boundary County. So then 2 foresters out of this office manage timber in Bonner County. Then we've got a small tree forester. He manages most of our forest improvement projects. I said we harvest approximately 35 million a year, worth $12 million. We also invest back into the ground, tree planting, tree thinning, pre-commercial thinning has to do with stalking control. You get the trees too tight, you have to go in, usually when they're 10 to 15 years old, and thin them out from, say, 6,000 trees per acre to 400 trees per acre, something like that. Gives you, and all that's done through contracting. And then, so that's a timber program mostly. We do have some leasing opportunities in Bonner and Boundary County. Most of those are recreation leases, cabin leases, 1 grazing lease, a mineral lease. We've got 4 mineral leases actually within Bonner County. So those gives you an idea how we make some of that money. Through, so then to public access, right? Most of the department's legal easements are for natural resource only. So that does not guarantee in a public access because the purpose of these lands are for revenue generation, primarily for those endowments. misconception a lot, they're not necessarily public lands. Land board policy does speak to, their green space, and dispersed recreation is allowed on all endowment lands as long as there's public access and it does not get in the way of the fiduciary responsibility on those lands. So that's kind of how we approach it. There's other states that through leasing, through exclusive hunting leases, restrict public access on those lands. State of Idaho saw that and said, for the good of all members of Idaho, we're going to ensure that hunting is allowed on endowment lands, so therefore Idaho Fish and Game pays the endowments through an MOU, approximately $500,000 a year. It was on a per acre basis that's been kind of ramping up a little bit. So that allows the endowments to still show a profit from allowing that dispersed recreation on endowment lands. So
So overall, are you guys expanding your portfolio slowly when it comes to total acreage owned, or is that just shifting?
we're at statehood, when those lands were granted to the state, they were about a third more acres than they currently are through just attrition, land sales, land swaps over time. That acreage has gone down. Knowing that portfolio is there, that having land over the long term is beneficial and can make money, generate funds, that land base has kind of been stagnant. I'm sure you're aware of the lake lot sales at Priest Lake. So some of those split estates were tried to, either sell them off or combine them. So that was the reasoning there. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I was trying to understand some of the earlier comments about some acquisitions of lands that actually have conservation easements on them. I didn't know if that meant that the portfolio was growing or.
Kind of staying stagnant for different reasons. Some lands, St. Joe just had, out of St. Joe, Idaho, St. Mary's, Idaho, just had 2 smaller parcels that the administrative burden to manage them was too much. So the land board decided to put them up for open auction. One of them sold, the other one did not. So there are
Gotcha.
areas like that where they are offering up. And the Real Estate Bureau for the Idaho Department of Lands is constantly looking for potential parcels to purchase, because there's a mechanism through the land bank. If land is sold, it doesn't go directly into that permanent fund. It is held within the land bank to be used for other purchases. So there are those mechanisms back and forth.
Okay.
Yep.
Expires, it's got 5
And,
years.
and the land bank has a 5-year expiration.
Gotcha.
And then if those funds are not used, they will go into the permanent fund.
Gotcha. So it's a pool for 5 years
Yep.
for acquisition, and then it's
Are you seeing, there's a lot of questions in this area about how the product is produced north, but the amount of money that comes back to the schools isn't really what they're wanting to see, like they should be getting more up north because of where the wood is coming from.
Great point.
And that has
yeah.
always been kind of a point of contention of Bonner County residents of how much we actually do produce and then how much comes back. Is there any scuttle about, how that happens? Are we going to see any changes with respect to that? Because I know there are some people that have reached out to state reps that want to have that conversation of it's coming from here, but what we get back in return for versus what comes out isn't necessarily worth it to
Yep.
us. So.
No, you're 100% right. Money generated goes,
Into a bucket.
yep, and then it is distributed by population. And so that is the current mechanism. That change would be made at that level, at your representative's level. So I would
So
encourage.
no discussion about that. We're not moving that. I know it's always a question I have to ask, and I know there's conversation, but has it risen to the level where they're considering population might not be the most fair and equitable way to distribute the funds when you consider where the product comes
Right.
from?
No,
Is
that-
no conversation
No, that mechanism is still the same, yeah. But, and again, that would be,
I say the same, it's the
Yeah.
state level one, but I have to
Yeah.
ask if we're moving that
Uh-huh.
direction. Because it's, even in this meeting, when they watch it and hear how much we produce and then we see how much we get back,
yeah,
it doesn't feel, it feels like we should get more.
yeah, right, definitely.
So,
And the only saving grace I could say is that the industry, because you're putting up $12 million, that also brings all of the loggers, the harvesters, the tree planting, and that all affects the economy, goes right back in, so we can say we have that industry here that is affecting the economy and helping out.
yes.
But you are correct, yeah, distributions are,
So
Double-edged
endowment
sword.
lands are owned, it looks like, by Idaho government entities.
yeah, so,
Schools, universities.
yep,
And then IDL is tasked with the job of managing it. That's
as a trust,
what I'm
yes.
hearing.
Yep.
Okay. And
And all western states were given endowment lands at statehood and part of the Admissions Act. And usually it was 2 sections per township and range, a 16 to 36. Say in New Mexico, some of those areas that have arid lands and they were worth less, they were giving additional acreage in those lands. So some of the, like New Mexico has, say, 6 sections per township and range.
okay.
And Chad, that's how Priest Lake became blocked, right?
In lieu, yeah, right. And, sometimes at statehood, those sections, 16 to 36, were occupied by homesteaders. They might be like in a navigable water. They might be, in a city center, something like that. And so the states were granted acreages in lieu of those acreages. And it was recently, like some of the in lieu lands that were transferred as federal lands, say BLM or Forest Service, were then transferred to the state. And some of those were as recent as like 1987. Even in this area, some of the lands up Bodie Canyon were transferred from BLM to the endowments. But all that is done now, so the state has acquired all the in lieu lands that it was promised at statehood.
Well, I would just like to say a thank you that somebody is actually managing the forests.
Right.
I'll make that comment.
Well, no, absolutely, and it's actually a question I have. Do you guys have any data, even if it's anecdotal observation, when it comes to how you observe the health and the reduced actual fire danger that we've experienced on IDL managed lands as compared to nearby federal lands?
Yep. So I could speak, we're directed by the Constitution, land board policy, and then down to what we have as a forest asset management plan that we redo every 5 years and is a full inventory of all endowment lands statewide. And that analyzes growth, risk, all that stuff, and puts it in and tells us what our annual harvest should be, how often we should be harvesting, that kind of stuff. So so that's how we manage growth and our annual harvest, is through that FAMP. Anecdotally, watching fires burn, managed mosaic of a forest has a lot more resilience than, say, a monoculture throughout, And, the endowments in Bonner County, we shoot to harvest every 50 to 65 years, keeping the forest young. And so that's kind of, so if that answers your question.
Yeah, that helps, thank you.
Great.
It's just, I think the more public knowledge and advocacy we can get for better forest management, the better off our community is, just from a pure safety perspective.
Yep. And that's, part of the purpose coming today to meet with you guys and give the update and what the endowments look at, being a large landowner in Bonner County,
Yeah, absolutely. Thank
Yep.
you.
Uh-huh.
It's a great segue for Mr. Holman.
There you go, Ken.
All right, good morning again. My name is Ken Womack. I manage our private forestry program from in what we call our northern area, so Kootenai County North, so all of Bonner County and Boundary County as well as Kootenai County. Our private forestry program has two primary components to it. One is the administration of the Forest Practices Act, and the other is landowner assistance or technical assistance to private landowners. So the Forest Practices Act is, it's establishing code, and the intent of which is, just to break it down real simply, it's to grow trees forever, keep productive forests productive, encourage active management, and protect natural resources. So keep the dirt out of the creeks, basically, is what it comes down to. And it's a very successful program. We administer that kind of following a notion or direction of voluntary compliance. That's what we're aiming for. So folks like myself and some of my staff, during, when a harvest job is active, we'll go out and visit with the logger, just make sure that they're aware of the stream protection zones we have on, various classes of streams and creeks, and, they're following those rules. And, we kind of approach it, we want them to comply, not out of, a heavy-handed hammer kind of approach, but just because it's the right thing to do, and let's be proud of the work that we do. And we had a lot of success with that. So statewide, we just had an audit last year. We actually get audited in the administration of our program through Idaho Department of Environmental Quality, so it's kind of like an independent audit, and we're at 95% compliance with all of our own rules, basically. So it's really high. So we have we have a great logging community in the northern counties, and they do a really good job of following the rules, and audits year after year show that they do a good job. So when a landowner does come in to get a landowner logger comes in to get if they're going to harvest, they come into our office and get a notification, which is a notification to us that they're going to be conducting an operation on a piece of forest ground. So this past year, currently right now in Bonner County, there's 727 active notifications out there. So there's 727 possible logging jobs. Doesn't mean they're all spinning at the same time. Right now there's, on average, that's, just a fraction of those are actually active at any one time. But yeah, there's quite a bit of activity out there. This past year, we issued out of this office 343 notifications, which is actually down somewhat from what it has been historically. But I mean, we're still producing a lot of wood in Bonner County. Last year, October to October, there was 27 million harvested off of non-industrial and industrial private lands. So about a third of that is industrial, and about 2/3 is non-industrial private timber ground. So yeah, very productive. So again, it's we work with the landowners, or work with the loggers. The flip side of that, we also work with landowners to provide technical assistance in a variety of capacities. Probably our most common call is, hey, my trees are dying. Can you come out here and help me? Tell me what's going on. So we do a lot of, insects and disease diagnosis. And through that oftentimes leads to, further conversation of, here's some options for you to consider, to better manage your forest, take care of this issue. And, a lot of times a wildfire issue comes up and we discuss that. So what I always tell landowners, we don't do anything. Like, I don't pick up a chainsaw and go do work. We don't have any money that I can actually give you to help with that, because there are cost share programs out there. But man, I'll talk your ear off all day long about trees and bugs and everything else you want to talk about forest related.
So you'll come out to a private property owner at no charge.
Yep.
And have a consultation basically with their trees in their forest.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's one of our primary things. We go out and, we'll set up a time with the landowner, go walk and, kick the dirt and just talk about what they have out there. As you're well aware there's a lot of newcomers to the county and a lot of folks, well, and even folks that have been here forever. A lot of people think they know a lot about their woods until they actually get out there and you start walking with, a forester, then it can be really eye-opening for them. So, yeah, and we don't, in that we provide technical assistance, we'll steer them towards, we'll suggest commercial harvest if we think that's something they want to consider. Of course, it's always up to them. It's their land, their objectives, whatever they want to do that's their decision, but we'll provide them the knowledge to make an informed decision on, how to go forward. The other element I mentioned, some cost share assistance. We don't actually administer cost share programs, but we do work with the county, NICS program, as well as the NRCS, and kind of in conjunction with the Good Neighbor Authority, there's this, you've probably heard of this concept of shared stewardship. I know it's been in the headlines here and there, but the idea being that, stewardship is best applied like across property boundaries, basically. So we've been making a real concerted effort between, the counties, the Natural Resource Conservation Service, which does offer cost share assistance, and ourselves to kind of message to landowners that there is assistance available out there. We'll help you, we'll point you in the right direction to get that, but we're just trying to break down those, sometimes it can be a little, government talk, there's way too many acronyms and we don't want to just point the finger and say, go talk to them or whatever. We kind of take the agencies out of it and just try to help landowners get the assistance that they're looking for. And a lot of that does kind of pair up with, treatments that are going on federal ground, largely through the Good Neighbor program, that we kind of expand those on the private ground. So we're available anytime for consultation. If, you can spread that to your constituents. That's what we love to walk around and talk trees and kick dirt. And the other component of what we do is education. That takes a wide variety from school programs. We host the Idaho State Forestry Contest every year. It's moved from DeLay Farms, and now in Farragut, but down in northern Kootenai County, southern end of Bonner County, and that's been going on for years and years. And then we also support the University of Idaho Extension and their forestry education programs, which offer some outstanding classes and real beneficial to the forest landowners. The one thing we don't do, we will assist landowners in developing forest stewardship plans, but we don't write tax plans. So if you come to us and we get that call, about here soon, the phone will start ringing. They want to get it in before December, and they'll ask us if we can write a tax plan. And we don't just write a plan for somebody to get a reduction in taxes. We will encourage them to take classes. If they show a real vested interest in learning about forestry, we'll assist them in writing a plan, once they've demonstrated to us that they got some skin in the game and they're into it for more than just the tax break.
You answered that question.
Yeah. We get it a lot.
I'm sure.
Yeah. And we'll refer them to a consultant or somebody to do that. If that's what you're looking for, there's others that'll provide that service. So, yeah, that's pretty much our
Awesome.
program.
Okay, well, are any questions so far?
No,
There's a lot of stuff coming at you. But,
Good
a
information.
lot of good information. Yeah, appreciate it.
so last but not least, our fire program. And Liz and I can kind of tag team this. But like all the other programs, people know about the putting fire out part, but that's just one of the things. But starting off with fire suppression, we have protection for all state and private forest land in Idaho. That's our jurisdiction.
When you say private, you're talking like Stimson and stuff?
Stimson, but even, non-industrial private forest land, that's our jurisdiction when it comes to wildfire.
Okay.
So in other words, you don't need permission unless you're dealing with essentially a federal property, unless you already have an MOU or something in place for that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the warden, there's great old statute text, we declare it the warden, the fire warden declares it a nuisance fire and like has the authority, yada, yada, to abate that nuisance.
Well, it's, the authority comes from the collection of that assessment as well. the
Yeah.
Protection assessment. So
Yeah.
we're collecting funds from landowners to provide that protection.
Yeah.
And that's helps fund part of our program.
Correct, yep, and that's with the county.
Okay, so part of the harvest fees pay toward that program, is that?
It's an assessment on, if you own forest land, you have your, if you look on your tax bill, you'll see there's a forest assessment, and that is a charge that is basically you're paying for fire protection.
Gotcha.
Through that.
Okay.
charge, yeah.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah.
So yeah, on the fire suppression side, we've got 30 primary fire staff during the season. 8 are, so there's 4 permanent in Sandpoint, 4 permanent in Bonners Ferry, and then a total 22 seasonals. 3 engines here, 3 engines in Bonners Ferry. We also host a 6-person wildfire suppression module, which is like that's an entity that can be ordered. It's a statewide resource, kind of like our Hell Attack program. There's a 20-person crew, hand crew in Deary. So we host a 6-person suppression module that can be assigned anywhere. We like big numbers and talking about acres. 840,000 acres of protection within the supervisory area. That includes Bonner and Boundary. Yeah, well-trained supervisory, so like Liz is part of our like leadership for the fire program. Let's see, and then there are these statewide, there are these performance standards, so some metrics we're supposed to, that we strive for. Less than 35 person-caused fires per million acres protected. Less than 900 acres burned per million acres protected. 94% of the fires are suppressed at 10 acres or less. If a fire exceeds 10 acres, we want to control that before the beginning of the next burn period. Making sure we have time for training to meet those, like there's, it's a physically demanding job and there are qualifications, right, to perform different tasks. On the back here, I got the numbers from this season. 52 on the Ponderay, so south of, in Bonner County, on this administrative unit, 52 fires, 3,264 acres burned. The bulk of that was the Sunset Fire. Liz was the first incident commander on that and the last incident commander on Sunset. And then the Sagebrush Fire, which was just south of Sunset, those were those were the only 2 fires that exceeded 10 acres. So the success rate here was, 96% of our fires were less than 10 acres, so meeting our objective there. Forest management or fire hazard management, so this kind of pairs with Ken's programs. Most forest practices here increase a fire hazard by creating slash. And in Idaho, you have to abate that hazard. There's a point system. And then, so we have fire staff who inspect, like Ken does for forest practices, we have staff who inspect to make sure that folks are mitigating the slash that's created. Well, we can help contractors develop those plans. The closed fire season is from May 10th to October 20th. So during that period, you need a burn permit from the Department of Lands that's free. You can do it, and most people actually do them themselves online. And once May 10th, this past May, we entered the closed season with all of the permits off. And it kind of scales like yard waste and burn barrels.
It goes from excuse me, it goes from a warming fire and then upgrades to 3x3, 5x5, 10x10, and so on and so forth, and then close restrictions is pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah. So we, just because of the conditions, when burn permits became like active, we weren't issuing any, just because of the weather, right? And you can always tell in October when the glow season is, because you walk outside and you can smell it, you know. And then fire prevention and cooperation. So we partner with 2 timber protection associations, rural departments, Forest Service. But there's, more than 6 million acres of state and private lands, forest and rangelands in Idaho are, kind of our job. There are places where, and Sunset was an example, the Sunset Fire was an example, there are places in the state where the state has the fire protection responsibility on federal land. And that was the case like Little Blacktail, that's part of that. They call it offset, that's the term. And then there are vice versa, there are places in Idaho where the Forest Service has protection responsibility for state and or private forest land. And that just means that who's paying for it. So like the Sunset Fire, that was the state of Idaho's protection, so the state is paying for that. We'll send folks, our staff here will go fight fires anywhere in Idaho, but even other states, and we have agreements with, like Ken, did you go to Alaska this year? Last year, but Ken, you went to Alaska this year, Canada, and then we also get we've had crews helping here from Alberta, like the Canadians will come down. Or I think this year we had a helicopter from Minnesota.
Minnesota, yeah.
So we contracted with a helicopter from Minnesota. That was one of the ones that was, rattling your windows here. Let's see, and even Hawaii, didn't Hawaii just join the Northwest Compact? Right?
We have a Northwest Compact with a bunch of different states, and it's Montana, Washington, Hawaii now. I think California's coming into it. Wyoming might be coming into it, and it basically allows reciprocity with other states, so we can use them and they can use us when they need it and when it's appropriate, if we're able to send people out when the fire danger is not so high, vice versa.
And then on the prevention kind of education side, we participate in both counties, the chiefs associations. In Idaho, the federal excess program is run through the Department of Lands. So that's a mechanism for usually it's the military, they're selling it's everything. It's pumps, like screwdrivers, all the stuff that the is not using or gets replaced. Firefighting organizations, the local districts can get equipment that way. And that just comes through the Department of Lands.
That's a great service.
Yeah. We have agreements, MOU, there's some acronyms, MOUs, ICMA, so the Idaho Cooperative I'm looking at Ken. ICMA, what's that? Management Assistance. Mobilization. So anyway, through this, we're all spacing the
Acronym
acronym.
for a reason.
Yeah. Right. Through those agreements, which we have with most of the fire districts around here, we can essentially be the hiring agency, and you could send a north side engine to California, which we did. And so then we process all the payment, but support that resource.
Because you're the contracted agency.
Essentially, yeah. We have memorandums of understandings with the local districts, just like on mutual aid or, that kind of emerging fire stuff. when it comes like prevention activities, working with the school districts and at the fair, our folks, our fire staff participate in the local emergency planning committee, the LEPC, Boundary County Fire Safe, the WUI group, and then the bonfire, right? Working with these guys on that. Yeah, that's what any questions?
I do want to just mention for housekeeping that we're going to have to end the meeting really shortly because we have a 11:30 meeting that we're going to have to give the clerk time to switch over for. But
I would like to say, I got to interact with a couple of you guys during that Sunset Fire, and I was amazed really at how well everything went, how organized everything seemed to be. And I just want to give you guys a big thank you on that fire. That was the one that I witnessed, how everything worked and grew and shrank. And just want to recognize that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, your emergency management program is so great to work with, like the model, in my opinion, for that kind of cooperation. So, yeah, thank you.
yeah, very much appreciate the support and was glad to see participation in the after action review as well last week and lessons learned and areas for improvement. Because no matter how successful we are, there's always room for opportunities to improve because, things happen outside of people's expectations. And so listening in to that was very educational for me to see and hear how we can improve, even though, it was well thought, but it's just great to know that there's always something we can do better. So appreciate all that participation as well. Does the board have anything else before we? Do you have any final comments you'd like to make?
No, just a big thank you, and don't hesitate to call. We'll try to, I like to do this once a year. If you think more often is appropriate, just let me know.
And I think we can make that request if we think that there's some new development, some new focus area that's worth really diving in on. But thank you for bringing everyone coming along to provide higher level of detail. And it's really great to be able to connect names and faces with certain programs and be able to answer community questions as they come up. So I think that's really helpful. So, all right. Well, thank you again.
Okay, thanks.
It's 11:27 and the meeting is adjourned.